Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined each and every day by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton. Jerry, you got the glasses near, but not on.
No, I think no number one ranking. I think that's out the window, but I do have them for a read later, so we'll talk about that later. Maybe I'll put them on after Sark's press conference today, Bobby. We'll see.
Steve Sarkisian is at the mic around 11 o'clock this morning. Jeff Howe, CJ Vogel will be there for On Texas Football. I'll be listening in, as will Jerry and Blake. It'll be interesting to see what Sark has to say. This is his typical kickoff of spring ball press conference. It's coming a couple weeks early. They won't actually hit the field until March 25th, I believe. But Sark and Sark's going to speak to the media. Could be some surprise news here or there. We talked about the possibility of injury report. So I want to get an update on Colton Vasek. Jerry, you're talking about another guy that might miss some time with injury as well. We'll get to all of that and get some answers, hopefully, from Steve Sarkisian. It'll be his first press conference since really the Ohio State loss. It's always good to hear from the ball coach and see what he's really thinking about. What is he trying to attack this offseason, Jerry and Blake? Because we can talk about, the offense in the red zone last year, the run game, some big things that maybe he can work on this offseason and have some answers for. Some of that could be personnel related, obviously. But then also what he was thinking about bringing in Alan Clark and Dwayne Akina and adding a Nichols coach and all those sorts of things on the defensive side of the ball. I think it could be a fruitful conversation with Steve Sarkisian later today, a guy that's riding high in college football world. I mean, 2 consecutive college football semifinal playoff appearances, just appeared on the NFL Network because he sent 14 guys to the combine. His Q rating, or whatever they call that in media, Jerry, I don't know that it's ever been higher than at this point. So interested to see what he has to say and the take on that.
Well,
Jeff's asking, is Sark's PC going to be on the LHN app? I do believe that's the case. I would say that I'll add this, and I didn't mention this, while Sark's having his PC, the folks in the athletic director's office are actually in Nashville this week from Monday through Wednesday for athletic directors meetings with the SEC. We could be hearing some news come out of that as well. So I'm not sure what it might be, but I'm sure it's around the 9-game schedule, potentially college football playoff ramifications, etc., house settlement discussions. But those are a couple of things happening right now of importance, kind of behind the scenes on the 40 acres and elsewhere.
The one thing we've learned from Sark is very transparent. So if he talks about, like in the past, Bobby, when he said somebody's going to be a really good player, take it to heart. They're going to be really – he's not just saying it. If he thinks they're going to be a really good team, he's come out and said it prior to a season. So I'm going to be very interested to see what Sark hits on today. But I think he's very genuine with his thoughts, and it's what makes him kind of who he is. I believe in recruiting and in college football. I think it's so important to be extremely genuine nowadays because everybody can look at what you've said in the past on YouTube, social media, whatever. So he's been very transparent about his teams, about players. Remember, he's given a lot of hints. Juan Davis before last spring, right, Bobby? I mean, he's given plenty of hints to the fan base and the media coverage over the last couple of years, and I would expect very similar today from Steve Sarkisian.
All right, before we get into some recruiting, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone out there about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
Yeah, John's been a supporter of On Texas Football from almost the get-go. We'd like to thank him as president of Longhorn Wealth Management. John's a proud Texas Life member himself. His wife and 6 siblings are also UT grads. This UT family passion is what led John to brand his firm, Longhorn Wealth Management. He dedicates it to providing investment, retirement, insurance, and estate planning services and solutions to Longhorn families and friends across the country. Well, John was disappointed in the Lady Longhorns' loss in the SEC Championship yesterday. In honor of Women's History Month here in March, let's be sure to keep supporting the Longhorns as they enter the NCAA tournament with a light number 1 seed. So celebrate their great season to date. John wants to offer all OTF fans a free 90-minute private consultation to learn how working with a certified financial planner like John can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and secure your legacy. Call John and the Longhorn Wealth Team, 972-707-4900, or go online, longhornwealth.net, to schedule your free 90-minute private consultation with John today. Hook 'em from John Donovan. 13 wins in a row, too, by the way, Blake, for the men's baseball team. John's talking about the women's loss. 13 wins for Jim Schlossnagel to kind of start this thing out. They're killing it over at Dish Falk right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. Best start in 20 years, guys. They're 13-1. Dropped that season opener to Louisville, but been on a roll ever since. Got UTA tomorrow night there in Austin, so a chance to be 14-1. And then conference play starts this weekend in Starkville as they head to take on Mississippi State. But, yeah, I mean, if you're a Texas baseball fan, you got to be thrilled right now. There's no doubt about that.
What about as an A&M fan, Blake?
Hey, Blake, is it pitching? Is it hitting? What is it that, for those people that don't follow baseball as closely, it sounded like, would they allow 6 runs all weekend to Santa Clara? Sounds like pitching is rounding into shape, and then they've got a couple of bats that are maybe special. And it's not necessarily everybody, but the young third baseman, Rodriguez, Mendoza, Flores, those guys are all kind of sharing the load right now. Is that basically it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Max Ballou as well. He's having one of the best seasons that I've seen somebody have in quite some time. Pitching's been really good, especially from a starter standpoint for the most part. They had the rotation change on Sunday this week with Cade being had been the starter, and then he was replaced by Valanta, so it was his first start. He did pretty well, but they've had like a mid-game lull with pitching throughout the season, and I think they're still working to get all those pieces figured out. But yeah, the offense, the bats are coming alive, as we get a little bit further into the season. So it's all starting to click, I guess you could say, for sure. And then Jerry, to your point, if you're an A&M fan, not too good right now. If you're an A&M baseball fan, they got buzz cuts, Jerry, Friday before to turn the season around, and then ended up losing yesterday to New Mexico.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Aggies beating the hell out of each other on both sides this weekend, right?
Yeah, they are the Aggies.
Yeah.
Hey, Blake, as we talk about that, they start. This is for, by the way, Mike White's softball team's killing it. I think they're 24 or 25-1. This is the week both of those teams, softball and baseball, start SEC schedule, right?
Yeah.
Texas goes, the baseball team goes to Starkville, and then I believe the softball team goes to Gainesville to play Florida. So interesting for those two teams. And softball will be ranked number 1 in the country doing that. And they have 2 more games today. I think they play Ohio State in Columbus today. And then
Ohio State,
Yeah, and then but baseball will be top 10. Softball will be ranked number 1. Which leads us to the team that is not ranked, but we need to talk about, Jerry Hamilton, and that is the Texas men's basketball team.
Should I turn my hat around for on Texas basketball? Okay, all right, let's go.
Perhaps. Give us your thoughts on what's going to happen there.
I mean, look, there's been 16 job openings so far in college basketball. The carousel is moving. Kevin Keats got fired Sunday, a year after a Final Four, by the way. I mean, look, I think the writing's on the wall, barring something miraculous happening, which I just don't see with this team. So the question and the discussion then becomes, what if the move is made, as people expect, Bobby? What level is Texas going to go to in basketball commitment? Because I think that's what the Texas fans are going to be asking, because that's going to tell you where your realistic pool of candidates would come from. And I think in discussions with you and some things I've heard, they're willing to make the biggest commitment they ever have in terms of salary, which turns into salary for head coach, salary pool, because that's got to go up, and then your NIL commitment moving forward. So I think, look, I think we know what's going to happen, and then it's going to come down to if that type of commitment is made, then Texas fans will be extremely happy because, look, the commitment that Beard, I mean, being a Texas graduate, I think all in was around 10-3 with his salary, assistant coach, everybody's salary pool plus NIL. I think that number could jump as high as 16-18 now, because it's going to look, whatever happens, there's not a UT graduate out there. It's going to be a mercenary hire, and a mercenary hire comes with an expense. What are your thoughts, Bobby?
I think that Texas is willing to commit to basketball. It's one of the two sports that makes them money on a consistent basis. I think that Chris Del Conte built this fantastic arena, the Moody, and he wants to fill it up. And he wants to have a basketball team that can garner some support. I think that the money is going to be there, Jerry and Blake. I really believe that. I'm not worried about the money that Texas has to spend. I'm more concerned about them getting the right guy. And I do think he's going to be forced to make a move. I think not making the NCAA tournament and kind of dropping down in production each successive year he's been at Texas that's kind of the problem, is what is the direction of the program? Because right now they're going to have to go out. If Rodney Terry were to stay, they're pretty much going to have to go out and rebuild the whole roster again. And so it's not like he's got this thing going in the right direction where you can see a path, you know? And so I do think they're going to have to make a move. When would Del Conte make that move? I don't know. Jerry, you've heard some rumblings behind the scenes that Rodney Terry's also being courted by some other, I would call them mid-majors like South Florida, where he might be able to get a longer deal. Maybe that's the Marquette for Shaka Smart, and Texas doesn't have to owe as much on a buyout. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't have all definitive answers to.
Bobby, one of the big things is for a salary for your pool of candidates is what is a buyout number that Texas would go, because that's the important number. I think the salary number is one thing. That's your investment all in and on an annual basis plus salary pool for assistants plus NIL. And that's going to probably get between 15 and 18 million. I think it's almost got to if you want to be a top tier program. And I think Texas does want to be. And I think they're going to make that huge. And I'll be surprised if they don't make it that type of investment for the first time, even though Beard's investment was really good at the time. It's escalated from there. The question is, what's a buyout? Because there's some big buyouts of guys that are always asked about on here. And there's a certain level where you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that, especially for a guy that might be here a year and go straight to the NBA after that, or 2 years and go straight to the NBA. That's not happening. So what's that buyout number is going to be the key in all this. What are you willing to go to in terms of buyout? The other interesting thing in college basketball has been there's more NBA assistants being hired in head coaching jobs right now. Utah, Alex Jensen, Luke Lokes at FSU, both graduates, but no buyouts with those guys. You're not spending the big buyout money. You're going to more of the pro model. Obviously, BYU did that a year ago, and there's been a couple others as well. So you're starting to see that more. And I'm not saying that's happening with Texas at all. It's just something you're seeing more in college basketball too, Bobby. But what about the buyout number? I mean, because that's a big part of this discussion. And when I say buyout number, I don't mean what would be owed to RT. I mean, what would be you'd have to pay for your next guy.
Well, I think, frankly, it could be reliant somewhat on what RT's buyout is, right? I think that it'll be 5 to 10 is probably the max they would want to go. And I want to say this. I don't have direct knowledge of that one, but they're willing to do something for a buyout. They're not willing to go pay $20 million buyout that Nate Oates has or whatever his number is, right? That would be a one-time hit And to your point, Jerry, they can absorb annual costs much more easily than they can just taking in and writing a check, lump sum check out to somebody. Maybe they figure out something different. But look, I want Texas to go and find the right coach. That's the most important thing. And to get somebody in there. I talked about parameters last night for this job. Consistent winner. Pretty safe bet that he's going to win. And then offensive minded. I think that's the other piece. We want somebody that can score points and fill up an arena. That's a big piece. Hey, Jerry, we got to turn to recruiting because some news happened over the weekend. One of the Texas top targets at wide receiver, Naeem Burrows out of Jacksonville, Florida, decided to commit to Clemson on Saturday. Somewhat of a surprise to us, but we still don't know if he's going to take other visits, etc. So maybe he's still looking at Texas potentially. What are you hearing on Naeem Burrows, and what do you got for us overall in recruiting?
Well, we'll see. We'll see on that. I mean, look, a lot of people have picked Florida for him, and then he up and commits to Clemson like a few days after people were starting to pick Florida for him. Clemson had a big weekend. That's Dabo strikes early a lot of times. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out over time. I do think with Naeem Burrows, they didn't get him on campus January 20th, which set them back in the whole process. But we'll see. I mean, look, Sark and those guys, they generally don't give up on guys they really like. So we'll see how it plays out over time if they get him on campus in June or this spring. If they don't get him on campus this spring, I think that it'll be a tougher deal to get him on campus in June. But then you have the whole season and it plays out. And Burrows is a top guy on the board. So that was a guy that Clemson got in and took away from Florida, first of all. And then Texas was right there in it too. Those were the three schools that I'd mentioned with him. USC, even though they had an OV, was a distant peripheral fourth. Kids love that idea, that USC visit. On running, I'll say this on running back recruiting. I think Amari Latimer, Texas is still planning. I think right now, we'll see, to try to bring Amari Latimer in for an official visit. Again, one of those guys, Xavier Crowell, is going to officially visit June 6th through 8th. He'll also be in town in March, late March. You have KJ Edwards, who will be in town in either March or April out of Carthage, obviously June 6th official visit as well. Javian Osborne, we'll see on that one. Derek Cooper, obviously, he wants to make it. Texas wants to get him on campus this spring, see where it goes from there. Amari Latimer, a guy that had a really good relationship with the Shard Choice, a downhill inside zone, powerful runner. Chad Scott, Texas, has talked to him since he's been at Texas, and we think there's some plans being made here for an unofficial visit in the spring, in June official visit. The other thing is I think Texas will start to have a sprinkling of guys on campus, potentially that March 22nd weekend, maybe a few this weekend, because there's 7-on-7 tournaments. And anytime there's 7-on-7 tournaments, if a team can fit it around the travel schedule, they'll bring their guys to Austin and College Station for a couple, 3 hours at a time, one day. And that's what happened last spring. Like guys like Grayson Littleton, and no fanfare came with that, but him, Zealous Hicks, some of those other guys were on campus in the spring kind of for the first time. And then you had even guys like Myron Charles, Javian Hilson, who were with the California Power 7v7 program. Those guys would make unofficial visits to Austin with those 7-on-7 teams. So we're entering that portion of the process for Texas right now. So you'll start to see a few guys trickle in and out, come through. And it may not be guys Texas is seriously after. It may be guys they're monitoring. I mean, Grayson Littleton wasn't offered till November of his senior season, but was on campus with one of those 7-on-7 teams. And Texas knew they liked him, and they knew he had an interest in Texas, but he committed to Clemson early. Hello, Naeem Burrows, committed to Clemson early, and then had a change of heart late in the process. And Texas and Michigan were there. Michigan had already been on him a long time, and then Texas came in and offered him and ultimately won out in that recruitment. Boy, Amari Latimer smoked that guy at linebacker while I was talking. So we're going to start to see some of these guys make unofficial visits. But again, the big unofficial visit weekends for Texas this spring, March 29th, April 12th. And then you get into the portal period, April 15th through 25th. as well as the spring evaluation period starts April 15th for the college coaches. So it all falls in line for Texas and what their kind of plans are. March 29th, big visit weekend, April 12th, big visit weekend unofficially, then roll right into portal. We'll roll right into college spring evaluation period.
Hey, you're talking about those big weekends, but Texas boy Teddy wants to know, how does no spring game affect spring and summer visits?
I don't think it affects it in a major way. Here's the thing, for Texas, where they're at right now, I don't think it's like hurts Texas that they're having a spring game. I think so. April 12th is probably when they're going to have all those kids in that they'd have for a spring game, essentially, which in some ways the coaches have more time with those guys. So from an in-house perspective, they may see it as a positive. From the fan experience on the outside, it's a negative. From a coach's perspective, Bobby, on the inside, it may be a positive because they don't have to deal with all the spring game stuff, and they have to spend even more time with families and kids.
Jerry, another guy, Texas offered him last night, Mason James, wide receiver out of Norman North, a young man that you'd think was probably going to OU, but he's actually coached by Margin Hooks down in the Dallas area. Works out with him, Caden Finley in that group. Mason James is an interesting guy because I can't remember what last wide receiver from Norman was. That Ryan Broyles maybe that made some noise, I guess, for the Sooners. Is he going to be a guy that Texas maybe looks at athletically? I mean, there's a number of wide receivers, but he may fit that Naeem Burrows type role potentially. Granted, I think here we're looking at him right now. Granted, he may end up being a Sooner, or think he took an official or unofficial visit to Washington last week. What do you know about Mason James?
Yeah, Oklahoma's considered the favorite, but you know how this stuff goes. He's visiting there June 20th, last official visit weekend. Arizona State, he's got an official visit there as well. Arizona State attacks a little differently. They're more early on some of these kids to see where they stand. But yeah, he can run. He's got a little explosiveness to him. But a guy that, look, Texas, we say this. I mean, they're going to keep evaluating guys. Chad Scott probably hasn't made his last offer. Dwayne Aquina probably hasn't made his last offer. We know that corners coach Mark Orfe hasn't made his last offer. I don't think Lowell Clark at Edge has made his last offer either. And Kenny Baker's a possibility. So I think when you look at recruiting right now, the only position that I think is locked in on guys right now, and I'm not saying Texas couldn't offer somebody, but offensive line right now is the one position where I think things are really locked in. They got 10 guys coming in for official visits already. I think they lead for enough of those guys to where you feel like, and with one guy committed, you feel like maybe 3 or 4 guys maybe potentially are kind of already on the board. And then it comes down to getting the last 1 or 2 your battle on at some of those tackle positions. So I think that is the only position right now, obviously quarterback, but that's a given, that's kind of locked in. Now, Jeff Banks has made more tight end offers than in recent classes. So of note there for potential 2 tight end class. But Mason James, Oklahoma is considered the favorite. We'll see what happens. Arizona State has an official visit. There's a number of schools in it, but he's a guy like Missouri's really going to fight Oklahoma on him. But he's a guy who's he's kind of rising with the college coaches this early this spring and late through the season.
He's got some speed to him, some quick speed too, Jerry. He's off
fast
the line
starter. Fast starter.
Yeah. Be interested to see what he runs. Good player. Good stuff, Jerry Hamilton. Appreciate you, man.
All right, Jerry, before we move on, I'm going to let you tell everyone out there about Joy Mode.
Here we go, baby. Say goodbye to weak erections with Joy Mode Sexual Performance Booster. This all-natural supplement is designed to enhance blood flow, giving you a firmer, more reliable erection. But Joy Mode isn't just about better sex. Daily use supports healthier blood vessels. Sounds positive. Boosts heart health, want a good ticker, and enhances your athletic performance. We're dunking on everybody. Expertly formulated and backed by science, it's proven to improve erectile function by 50% in just 60 days. Simply mix with a pack of water. Feel the effects within 45 minutes. Take control with Joy Mode. Get a boost anytime, anywhere, and never miss a beat, period. Joy Mode features 4 simple, proven ingredients, unlike prescription options that involve doctor visit and managing refills, pill bottles everywhere. Joy Mode provides a straightforward, effective solution. Over 200,000 men trust Joy Mode to boost their performance without side effects. Start a subscription and save up to 30% today. Keep your performance at its best without any interruptions. No 8 minutes of not being able to make a basket, none of this crap. If you're looking to take your game to the next level, visit tryjoymode.com and use code ONTexas, all caps, at checkout for 20% off single purchases and 30% off subscription orders. That's tryjoymode.com and use code ONTexas, again, all caps, for 20% off single purchases and 30% off subscription orders. A&M baseball fans and team, plenty available for you all.
I got you.
Texas
I knew you were going to go there.
Yes.
I knew you were going to go there,
Us
so I had it
in
ready.
Joy Mode, baby. Look how happy those guys are with their Joy Mode.
And buzz cuts. Hey, speaking of something that a little bit more serious tone here, Xavier Worthy was arrested over the weekend on Saturday morning, I believe. Williamson County up in Georgetown, Texas, brought him in with under the idea of, I guess, strangulation or impeding airflow to a family member. And everybody jumped to this conclusion that, oh no, this is the typical athlete story. And I will grant you this. That is the typical athlete story. They think they're bigger than the law and they do something untoward and they get, put in the limelight. Well, this is where the story took a strange turn on Saturday. Xavier Worthy hired an attorney who put out an immediate statement saying that the person that is accusing him of this was the person that also had failed to vacate his residency and was somewhat extorting him, to lack of a better term, for being able to do that. So by the end of Saturday night, after a Saturday morning, everybody thinking, oh my goodness, here's Xavier Worthy, another first-round draft pick who's going to be a cautionary tale. By Saturday night, no charges filed. They're not going to move forward with anything. Probably, and I can't say this for sure, but it sounds like it's because there was some truth to what Xavier Worthy's attorney put forth. So we need to mention that and talk about it. But at any rate, it's a couple things. One, don't rush to judgment. If you were there on Saturday morning, you saw that, and your first inclination was, oh my God, he's guilty and this is going to be horrible. I get it. A lot of people do that, but don't rush to judgment and think too much about that. And then secondly, I'm happy for Xavier that he's moving forward. We'll see how everything goes. But my point on it all is don't rush to judgment or grade these people before you know the whole story.
Okay, guys. Well, let's take a look here as Pro Football Network has put out a new 7-round mock draft, and I'm going to put it up here and kind of combined it to make it a little easier on the eyes here. And we'll take it 2 rounds at a time. In the first round, they got the Cowboys at 12, taking Matthew Golden. He would be the first Longhorn taken, followed by the Dolphins at 13, taking Kelvin Banks. And then the Steelers at 21, taking Jahdae Barron. And then in the second round, the only Longhorn taken would be wide receiver Isaiah Bond to the Washington Commanders at 61. So we'll stop there for a moment and let y'all weigh in.
Yeah, I think one thing is, these second, third round guys, I think those are subject to change. I mean, would Cameron Williams, Alfred Collins go in the second round surprise anybody? Absolutely not. Would one of those guys going late in the first surprise anybody? Probably not. But look, I think good for Kelvin Banks, man. That's where hard work pays off. You get to live in Miami. That'd be great for him. Matthew Golden to the Cowboys. I mean, good luck to you.
The 2 not going in that draft of the 14 that went to the combine are Jake Majors and Hayden Connor.
Yeah, I mean, if Texas gets 12 guys selected again, unbelievable. or 12 guys selected after double digits last year. Unbelievable, first of all. But it also, I think that what's also interesting about this is Quinn Ewers in the 5th round, Bobby. We'll see on that if that's where that ends up. But I think his pro day is going to have to be a really, really good one for him. And that's March 26th, by the way.
Yeah. I think that Gunnar Helm going as high as 3rd round's strong. But when you mentioned Quinn, when I had that conversation with Lance Zierlein, Jerry, a couple weeks ago, and he talked about how NFL teams draft quarterbacks, the 5th round doesn't surprise me as much as I on its surface, I would have been surprised by it. But the way he explained it, in his opinion, is, NFL teams, if they think if they think you can start for them, they'll pick you in the 1st round. If they think you're a starter, maybe in year 1, they'll pick you in the 1st round. Now, so if they don't, they will wait. After last year, the first quarterback after the 1st round that was taken was Spencer Rattler in the 5th round.
Yeah.
So maybe that follows that line of thinking for this mock draft, and I can see this. I can really see it. I will say this: you don't want to give the Miami Dolphins Jaden Blue. They've got Devon Achane. You add, they've got some speed now. Jalen Waddle. It would be the all Houston area track team, basically what it would be, with Achane, Blue, and Waddle out there. Add in Tyreek Hill, and all of a sudden you got a 4x1 that may medal, wherever the next Olympics are.
Gunnar Helmet in Indianapolis. Oof, from a quarterback perspective, he's got I don't know about that for him. I got to get that one figured out.
And I'm going to take this super chat here while we're on the subject. This one from our friend Jack. And Jack says, who are the guys that will most benefit from the pro day? Could it be someone like Norton or Benda?
Silas Bolden, in terms of free agent, runs really well at pro day, puts on a show catching the football. Silas Bolden, from an undrafted free agent standpoint, Bobby, potentially for him, I think could be a guy that catches some eyes that wasn't at the combine, that maybe didn't put up big numbers, but is going to get a lot of positive reviews from the Texas staff as a whole. I'm looking at maybe Silas Bolden.
I think that's fair. I think that the biggest one, though, is going to be Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
Like, he could, if people watch this, he will, or if people watch him on air for the first time, but GM steps in and watches him, they're going to be impressed. I've watched a lot of guys throw, and there's an ease, the ball comes out of his hands. And we'll see what it means, but I could see Silas Bolden meaning more. I could see the one guy that we talked about. Look, David Benda could be a player in the NFL because he has enough speed to be a special teams guy. And they use a lot of linebackers and special teams in the NFL. So I think he could be an undrafted free agent special teams guy. I would also tell you that if Jermaine Lole actually were healthy, I would watch him a little bit because I think he's giving up football at this point. But if he works out, somebody's going to get him in a camp and end up liking him.
No doubt. I think the other guys, I think Alfred Collins, whenever you start mention in a mock, either the last pick of the 1st round or through early 3rd round, and he didn't have a great, like a broad jump wasn't great. He needs to have a good testing day at Texas Pro Day, in my estimation, because he didn't test really. So this is going to be a big testing day for him. What will Cam Williams do? Coming off the knee, didn't take part at the combine. What's he going to do at Pro Day? I think those two guys have a chance to help themselves through the Pro Day. Obviously, Gunnar Helm, if the ankle's right and he runs in the 4.7s, that helps him as well, in the low 4.7s. So those 3 guys I'm looking at as well. But by the way, if Texas gets 12 players drafted, Texas staff will be all smiles, by the way. That'd be a huge day for this program once again.
Yeah. Okay, CBS recently came out with quarterback power.
Boy.
And before we get to questions, I thought we could talk about this here. And Arch Manning, number 1 in their quarterback power rankings, followed by Kay Klubnik from Clemson at 2, Carson Beck from Miami at 3, Drew Allar from Penn State at 4. And then you have the Arizona State quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, Lenora Sellers, South Carolina, Sawyer Robertson from Baylor, Rocco Beck, I'm sure I'm messing that up, from Iowa State at 9, and then Lagway from the Gators closes out their 10. Of course, you see some honorable mentions down there, Vanderbilt quarterback, Avery Johnson, Kansas State, so on and so forth. But what about Arch Manning at number 1, guys?
So it's time to tear this list apart. First of all, I mean, obviously CBS felt like they're behind on this click, so they got theirs. Look, where Arch ends up, we'll see. But number 1 right now, you can't do that. You can't do that. Obviously, if you go down this list,
you can do that, and they did it.
They did it,
and we're talking about it. But here's the crazy thing to me: Sam Leavitt 1,000% should be ahead of Carson Beck. I've actually heard he's Nussmeier ahead of Carson Beck in my estimation. I mean, I don't see it. I don't see that one. I mean, Carson Beck was not having a good season last year before his injury. I mean,
he stole his Lambo too recently.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard Sam Leavitt is really taking it to the next level this spring for Arizona State. I've been told that twice. He is a ultra competitor type of guy. And now that it's kind of his program, he's going to even another level, I was told this past week.
I'm going to say this, like for college football, I'd take Kevin Jennings over Garrett Nussmeier for college football. That's part of the problem with these.
Where would you take Lenora Sellers in year 2 as a starter?
Probably 3 or 4.
Yeah. And by the way,
he might wait. Let me finish real quick, Jerry. The other thing I was going to mention, and I'm glad Blake rolled it down to this level. What's Rocco Beck, who's going to be a third-year starter at Iowa State, by the way? What's he going to look like without those 2 wide receivers that are going to be first, second round guys? I mean, that's a lot of talent that he's going to lose. That's kind of like, is he going to, that's kind of like Quinn Ewers losing Worthy and Adonai Mitchell and Jordan Whittington, right? Rocco Beck loses that. Are they going to replace those 2 guys in the portal like Texas did? It'll be there. And I do think DJ Lagway will end up top 5 quarterback in college football next year.
What's interesting with Lagway, he's got something going on with his shoulder. You don't sit out a young quarterback in the spring, and now he'll do some stuff, but if he's limited in the spring, it's not like he's a 3-year starter and he's on the same page with all these receivers at the school and they've been throwing together for years. There's 3 stud high school receivers that just came in early. There's J. Michael Sturdivant out of Flower Mound. Marcus, who was at Cal, UCLA, now at Florida, out of the portal, will be one of the go-to guys. I'm interested to see with Lagway really what's going on with him. If he's limited this spring, when he hadn't had a first 1 year as a full-time starter, he's got something going on with his shoulder. And I'm not saying it's going to be a factor this season, but that's not a scenario where you hold a guy out, a young quarterback. So he's got this little something going on. That's going to be interesting to follow. The Lagway thing is very weird. I agree. Who's Ohio State's quarterback going to be? Unless they go to the portal, it's probably going to be Julian Sayin, the redshirt.
What they're saying.
Who's very talented, really accurate kid. But again, his first college real game will be against Texas with pressure on him. David Keith, it's interesting to seeing all the opinions on here about the quarterbacks. Some people think Nussmeier. I think Nussmeier is really talented, by the way. There's a lot of people on talking about Leavitt, which I agree with Leavitt. I think he is going to be a tremendous college quarterback. And somebody asked, what's he going to look like without Scatabo? Well, he looked pretty good without Jordan Tyson. So they get Jordan Tyson back. They released Brown, the USC transfer, as a running back / slot receiver. They love him, from what I hear. Really talented pass catcher out of the backfield. Going to be similar with probably more consistency than a Jaden Blue for them. So he's going to have weapons. The running back they got from Navy is supposed to be a pretty good player. I think the guy that's on that list that's not going to be talked about, that's a great fit, is Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. He'll have a big year at Indiana in that system. He's more talented than the kid last year. Better feet, more arm strength down the field. If you didn't watch Mendoza at Cal, he's a pretty talented kid. I think he'll have a big year for Indiana and keep them competitive.
Yes. Kurt Cignetti is going to keep them competitive this year, which was, they had this miraculous year in 2024. He's going to be able to do it again with the Mendoza.
Yeah.
That was a big, big pickup. I will say, I will add this as it relates to quarterbacks and where Texas might be ranked with Arch Manning. I think that to rank him the number one quarterback going into the year when he's, he hasn't thrown nearly as many passes as anybody else on that list. I think it's a bad idea. So we'll see what it is. We'll see what happens. Lots to talk about, lots to discuss. And I will add to you, Jerry, I'm not a Carson Beck fan. So I don't see the allure there. He's not quite like, I could see him and Garrett Nussmeier. I think Nussmeier is a little bit more of a gunslinger, has a little bit more better, not foresight, maybe might be a way, anticipation, that sort of thing. But I'm not all in on Carson Beck either.
And look, I mean, he's coming off it's 420 Summer says, watch out for Austin Mack at Alabama. We talked about this a year ago with Austin Mack. When Kalen DeBoer left Washington and went to Alabama, Julian Sand was in the recruiting class for Alabama. And he was on campus, I believe. Well, DeBoer, knowing that, had offered Julian Sand out of high school, as had Sark and other people, right? But after Arch went to Texas, Sand wasn't going to come to Texas. But for him to bring the guy he redshirted to Alabama from Washington with him, you don't do that unless you think that guy's going to be a big-time player. I know a lot of people think, Keelan Russell's going to go win that job. We'll see. They literally took a quarterback from Washington to Alabama with them. You don't do that unless you think that guy's really, really good.
Everybody I've talked to, Jerry, says that it's not Austin Mack's job. It's Ty Simpson's. And that's for people close to that program. Talk about a prove-it year for somebody. How big a prove-it year is it for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama?
Because of the fan base. Just because of the fan base.
No, he's following perhaps the greatest coach of all time.
Right.
This is the typical. All right, if he doesn't win 10 and get to the playoffs, they're going to talk about firing him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's because of the fan base. It's because of where you're at. I mean, look, you take over a job and you win 9 games, and maybe some of it's not pretty in transition year. Right. I mean, everybody's like, you should just go in and win a national championship. And it doesn't work that way. I mean, but it's where you're at. Guy's a great coach. If Alabama does something stupid with him, which they won't do because they AD, they'll regret it. They'll start their down spiral. They better be careful. They got a really good coach. They aren't going to hire somebody better than that. They better be careful.
I'm just telling you, they don't make the playoffs this year after having 15 years of Nick Saban. And so they're out of the conversation 2 years in a row, Jerry. I'm not saying they're right.
They'll start their downward spiral.
I'm just telling you that.
I know. And I don't disagree with you. They'll start their own downward spiral as a program, though. They better be careful.
Kalen DeBoer said something that was completely tone deaf the other day, too. He said, we want to get it back to where it's even for us at Alabama because other teams have more NIL capability, apparently. And I was like, when was it even for Alabama? Before you got there, it was not even. Nick Saban had them, rolling. So I think that, that's going to be a tough gig. I do believe that getting his offensive coordinator back is going to be a big help. Because that offense of his last year, if it may have been Jalen Milroe, with the problem being the problem that he wasn't his type of quarterback because he's not a distributor per se. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, I think he's a great coach like you do, Jerry. So I think he's ultimately going to get himself out of it. But they slip up somehow and only win 8 next year. They tend to fire coaches quickly in that neck of the woods. Alabama and Auburn. They'll pull the plug. They don't have any problem with it.
They better be careful.
You and I agree.
All right, guys. Before we do get to questions, I have one other thing to bring up. I think it was Friday, Bobby. You actually brought up about the 3 student journalists from I believe from the Daily Texan, if I recall correctly, that traveled 16 hours to go to the SEC Women's Championship tournament. And Vic, thinking about Nick Saban, Vic Schaefer actually made a comment on this, and I think it's pretty cool.
So if I'm not mistaken, are y'all my 3 that drove 16 hours?
Yes, sir. No.
You 2, and who's the third one?
Charlie's over there.
I want y'all to know, when it comes time to get a job, you put me on your resume. That's really unique. And I'm proud that you guys are here, and I'm proud that you take enough pride in your job that you would do that, because you don't have to do that. And I think people need to know that. So thank you for being here.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Great comment by Vic.
I offered to pay for a tank of gas for him.
No.
They haven't hit me up yet, but
They wanted Bojangles. They turned you down.
yeah. Probably one of those Sprinter vans that takes $200 of gas in a tank. But no, I agree with Vic on this. I think that's great for him to do that. Young people, I say this to my own children, people want to see some level of sacrifice from you to know that you're bought into what you're trying to do and accomplish. And driving 16 hours is one of those things to go cover a basketball tournament. So I'm happy for him. And I think it's great that Vic called them out because they deserve that. They do.
Hey, by the way, we need to talk. I think we need to talk at women's. Was obviously lost South Carolina yesterday. I still think Texas will be a number 1 seed. Obviously, the selection show is Sunday night for women's, and that's the March 16th, Sunday night at 8 p.m. I think Eastern. It will be the selection Sunday show. I still think there'll be a 1 seed because Notre Dame had the late little season swoon there, which didn't help their cause. So I think there's really, and I think UConn, for whatever reasons, being underestimated, they're going to get dinged because of the conference they play in. But the fact that they're not really being talked about, they're just put on the 2 seed line, I think is dumb. But your number 1 seeds are likely going to be, I think you have Texas and you have UCLA and you have USC and you have South Carolina. Those 4. Are those 4 going to be your 1 seeds? Notre Dame pushes to a 2, NC State's a 2, a dangerous 2, and then UConn if they're a 2, which I think is dumb if they are. But is that the way that's going to shake out? Because then in the tournament when this comes out, what's going to be interesting is not just a 1 seed, but where is Texas seeded in the tournament, and where does that put who's the 2 seed in their bracket? Because this is very much going to be matchups, very much. This isn't like UConn men going into the tournament last year. Like, it don't matter who's in their bracket. They're just going to whip their butt. It's not like this. It's matchup dependent for this Texas team. So I'm very interested to see how it's going to play out. What's interesting is NCAA.net, I believe, has UConn number 1, but people are projecting them as a 2 seed. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out. They're getting dinged because they play in the Big East, which I don't know. I think it's dumb. I think UConn's really, really good. But for Texas, I think there's certain matchups that are going to be interesting to see in the NCAA tournament how the bracket shakes out.
That looks good. That looks pretty when you have 30 wins in a season, man.
Looks great.
That's a good freaking season. That's a big time season for the Longhorns, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think
Love
people are hitting on it. It's going to be 3-point shooting is going to be big because you're going to see they're going to come up against a team that's going to shoot the ball really well against them. It happens at like NC State. Somebody inevitably is going to have one of those games where they shoot it really well. I think of the teams, if you're talking about your teams, and this is as good as Texas is, and I think Vic's done a tremendous job with this team, considering Layla Feely has been out all year and's taken a red shirt. Aaliyah Moore, but really Layla Feely, who came over from Michigan, was first team All Big Ten and was supposed to give Texas that other perimeter threat, scoring threat from the guard position. The fact that she hadn't been able to play much all year and's taken a red shirt year really affected them offensively. And Vic's done a great job maximizing his core. The question for them, and I've been saying it, I'm going to continue to say this, is when you're going to inevitably come up against a team or a game, which that team's just going to be hot shooting it, and they're going to be able to shoot the ball from three, and their perimeter game is going to be on. Texas averages 3.2 made threes a game. That's way down the list in college basketball, women's college basketball. I think it's like 346 out of 363 teams. So if somebody goes and hits, and a team that's really talented and really good goes and hits 8-9 threes against you, if you only can hit 2 or 3, your margin for error is so small in the current game. That's what's going to be interesting is Texas, if they get in that game, is Texas going to shoot it well enough? If that team plays a zone and packs the paint against you and says, hey, we're hot, see if you can make it against us too and keep pace, is Texas going to be able to knock down enough threes? I really think that game is the one that is going to be the biggest hurdle for them in the NCAA tournament because there's no more home courts. Everything's neutral, bigger arenas. It's going to be that is the game that will give Texas the most trouble in this tournament. We'll see when that happens in this tournament. And that is what they're going to have to overcome because they just have a smaller margin for error offensively since they only make 3 threes a game and shoot it at a 30% clip. Puts a little more pressure on you come March.
Jerry, if you'll be so kind to let everyone out there know about Gooder, I would appreciate it.
I can do that. I got to put the shades on. Here we go. Stylish Sunnies starting only $25 a pair, 1-year free warranty, 30-day free returns. They're lightweight and they're comfortable. They're 100% polarized. They don't slip or bounce. None of that stuff. You can cycle 18 miles an hour with these bad boys on. From vibrant colors to sleek styles, there's a pair of Gooders for every personality out there in the world. Designed for both everyday wear and active individuals that love to run, hike, bike, and much more. When do you wear those Gooders? Beach. If you lose them in the water, you go to a car, get another $25 pair. You don't have to be digging through the sand, hoping you find your $300 glasses there. On a hike, playing pickleball, playing tennis with the Burtons, spring training baseball, whatever. Texas baseball, whatever. Texas Fan Day, April 26th, wear your UT Gooders because they're so affordable. You don't have to worry about losing or breaking them. You can have a pair for every occasion. If you need a new pair of sunnies, Gooder is giving On Texas football listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com/OnTexas and use that code OnTexas for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction. Add another 0 to that bad boy. Again, that's gooder.com/OnTexas. Use code OnTexas for free shipping.
And speaking of saving money, I need to tell you about Mint Mobile because I don't know about y'all, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. After years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up from those crazy high wireless bills, bogus fees, all those so-called free perks that actually cost more in the long run, and I made the switch to Mint Mobile. You can say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. And all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your own phone number. Of course, all your existing contacts as well. Ditch that overpriced wireless and get 3 months of premium wireless service from Mint Mobile for just $15 a month. If you like money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/ontexas. That's mintmobile.com/ontexas. An upfront payment of $45 for the 3-month 5 gig plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan of options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
Somebody asked this question I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
Or let me find this question. Salty Q asked, has women's team success made Terry's shortcomings more apparent? I want to answer that because no, it's the SEC, the league offensively. Texas lost 6 home games in SEC play this year, 7 big games when you count UConn. And offensively, in the SEC, you have to be able to score the basketball at a very high rate. I mean, you lose games in the 80s in the SEC sometimes. That it's a really high-end offensive league. And if you, like Saturday, you give your good teams, even though Jeremiah Fears was 3 of 14, they still scored 76 points against you. Teams are going to score points against you. The question is, can you get to the 80s consistently when you need to? Can you get stretched to the 90s against an Alabama, Florida, and Auburn? What was that, 87, 84? Can you stretch and score the ball at that high level in the SEC? And everybody talks about defense. These teams are scoring on your good defense. If you play good defense, they're going to score on you anyways. So can you get to 76? Can you get to 81? Can you get to 86? Can you get to 91 to win a game if you have to? That's the issue. That's the main issue. If you can't go put points on the board in this league, you aren't winning. Period.
You don't think the success of Vic Schaefer though hasn't put a larger focus on? So I would say this. No. I think that's fair. I think what Jerry's saying is fair. I will say this though. I think that the success of the entire
the entire thing
puts a focus on the ones that aren't performing as well. So you either step up or step out.
Yeah. And look, to your point, Bobby, to your point, CDC says when he has his meetings with his staff, with his coaches, head coaches, the expectation is to be a top 10 program, right? That's the expectation. Well, if they don't see you headed in that, doesn't mean you have to be there now, but if they don't see you ascending and headed towards that direction, then it's done.
I agree with you.
Especially if it starts losing money in a moneymaker.
Yeah.
We got a couple of super chats regarding basketball. Jeff Carey says Trey Johnson was 0 for 14.
Wow.
Jerry?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the totally unexpected. And the crazy thing in that game is Jeremiah Fears, Oklahoma's first-round pick, was 3 of 14, 3 of 15 at the same time. But to go 0 of 14 in your last, as great a season as Trey Johnson's had, to go 0 of 14 in your last home game, Everett, Texas, is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy to me.
And then Trace Little, thank you, Trace, for the super chat, says, let's start a GoFundMe to buy out the next coach, LOL. However, rumor is Tom Herman is coming back as the men's basketball coach.
That would equal 400 season tickets sold.
and the score would be in the 40s.
30.
It'd be a return to Bob Weltlich. For people old enough to remember that, the score was in the 40s on the regular back then. Yeah, and Daryl Klein's right. I mean, Chris Del Conte is already working on this. I mean, now, can he say that publicly? Should he say that publicly? No. But he understands. We'll see where it goes. And then it is going to have an impact on the Directors' Cup. The men's track and field team, I think, also came up way short of last year. So Texas probably not going to win the Directors' Cup this year, as of right now, based on what Directors' Cup updates Dr. Brett Wilkinson is saying. It looks like it might be North Carolina that wins this year. So we'll have to wait and see. But Texas still expected to win the SEC best athletic program, but we have higher aspirations than just the SEC. I'll put it.
By the way, we have great threads on OnTexasFootball.com on the college basketball coaching carousel. If you don't come over there, if If you want to be part of that discussion, I think that thing is many 30, 40 pages deep at this point. I haven't looked. I just posted some thoughts this morning on that as well on TexasFootball.com. So if you aren't a member over there and you want to talk some hoops and see where all this is going, come say hello.
And if you're not a member, then I might as well tell you, you can use promo code OTFOG and get a full year for just $49.95 on TexasFootball.com as well. So, like Jerry said, check it out.
And again, big this morning. Sark hits the mic in about 2 hours, talking his spring practice PC media session, as well as Bobby said, first time since the loss to Ohio State that Sark's taken the mic, and we'll be interested to see what he has to say there. We're kind of monitoring a player that I'm not saying Sark will mention it or whatnot, and we'll wait for Sark to mention that to see if they're going to be full strength for the spring. Obviously, the long season. I think there's one person we're watching for that will be limited or not take part. Period in the spring does not affect next season.
We got some more super chats to get to this morning, and it's 4:20 somewhere. Thank you for your super chat. Says track speed. Dylan Mitchell broke the national freshman record running a 10.29, and Duncanville's Braylon Williams won at 9.99. Man, it's so early in the year for those speeds. He says that, Jerry, I couldn't find any results for Nick Townsend. Do you have any idea how he did?
I'll text Nick. I'm planning to get out this couple of track meets this week. I've given the guys a couple of weeks here to get their legs under them and get going. I'm going to start getting out the track meets. You know, I love those. Those are some of the favorite things for me to cover in this business. I'll check in with Nick. I need to see where they're running this week anyways. Anybody that knows, what was the wind on that 999?
2.6. To me, it wasn't wind legal.
Yeah, I didn't think that because it was really windy in Texas, in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it was run at A&M, if I'm not mistaken.
It was at A&M. Yeah.
He ran a 9.99 in high school. Holy cow. There were some young football players. I think there was a sophomore at DeSoto that's a running back that ran 10.3. Their speed is, look, 10.6, 10.7 used to be elite speed. I'm not so sure that that's not becoming 10.4-ish now in the high school level, given exactly what they're doing nowadays.
The running back at DeSoto is a move-in into the state. He is going to be one of the top prospects in the country, assuming he stays in that class. All these kids are trying to reclass now. Assuming he stays in the 27 class, he's going to be one of the top prospects in the country. 6'1.5", 6'2", 215, 220, running what would have been a 10.45, 10.5 when legal is. That's smoking early in the track season now.
For that big guy.
Tape's really good. Tape's really good too.
Yep. McCoy is his name. Is that right?
Myron Johnson.
Myron. Yeah, I got you.
All right. One other super chat. Coach 420, thank you for the super chat. Says Blake package is on the way. Hope Colt enjoys it. Thank you. He is looking forward to that. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, Daddy Trill brought up one I got to bring up, man. It's a tough one. Duncanville beat Bel Air. Close game, 54-52. Man, David Peavy's a hell of a high school coach. I know he's got talent, man, but those jobs, that doesn't mean those jobs are easy. That guy gets it done in playoffs and tight games. He always has. But DFW, if you count Beaumont Westbrook as Golden Triangle and not Houston area, which I do, DFW went 5-0 against Houston in state championships in basketball over Friday and Saturday. So DFW, if you're up there flexing a little bit, you should flex a lot. But those games are really close this year. They're getting – it's not as much of a difference. Like in your 4As, I mean, Dallas Kimball and Houston Washington or Wheatley, all those, those aren't comparable. But in your 5As and 6As, they're really tight. And what's happening in Texas high school basketball is interesting. If you have a really – like Trey Johnson goes to Link Prep his senior year after winning state his junior. If there's a really good big, those kids are generally moving out of the state. They're going to go to preps. They're going to go play at the national ESPN programs. I call them ESPN programs, those games. Even a Hudson Greer at Lake Travis goes to Montverde. The state, a lot of the top guys, especially your bigs, they aren't around for their senior year. So it's very, very guard driven in the state of Texas right now because those bigs they're not staying. They're not going to stay in state. They're going to go play at the Link Preps or one of those places. as a senior. So state of Texas in basketball is really interesting.
Belair missed a wide open 3 at the end of that game. I mean,
Yeah.
wide open. Dribble kick. I mean, he's wide open. Great
Denton
pass.
Geyer by 1 over Katy Jordan, the new school in Katy, or relatively new school in Katy. 1 point, 2 point games. They're right there. It was great. It was great games.
Our next question comes from Brendan, and I'm going to put the stats up here for you so y'all can answer this. Brendan says, what do you set as an early over-under line for Wingo's stat line this upcoming season? I could see him and Moore going over 850 yards receiving. Of course, last year, Wingo had 472 yards and 2 touchdowns and then rushed for another 100. So what would be a good stat line next season?
65, 950 to 1050. I think Ryan Wingo is going to have a big year. I think as long as he stays healthy, he came in so locked in, Jerry. We talk about that term, but Colin Simmons was locked in. Ryan Wingo was locked in. Now they hit the wall at different times and all this other stuff. But about 65 and 950 to 1050 would be my number. Doesn't mean it couldn't be more, but Sark likes to distribute the ball a little bit more than some people. DeAndre Moore, let's see what goes on there. But I mean, maybe 60 for 900. I want to see who the third receiver is before I actually give out numbers, because if they bring in somebody that's a 1, let's just say they bring in a true 1 receiver in the portal, the numbers have to be reconnoitered, right? Or refigured. If they don't, then I think that Ryan Wingo is your number 1. And at that point, those numbers I gave you are really, I think, going to happen regardless.
And he, by the way, he needs to have a big year. He needs to have a big year because then he'll start that 2027 NFL draft is going to be loaded at wide receiver. He needs to have a big sophomore year to position himself to be that 3-year guy that goes in the first round, as his talent level suggests, because that 2027 draft is, it has Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman at Auburn. I mean, there are some very, very, very high-end receivers in his class that'll be out in 27, not to mention guys that will be seniors that'll be out in 27. So I think for him as well, not just for Texas, but for him, he needs to have a big sophomore season to kind of set up his junior year, because you don't recruit Ryan Wingo from St. Louis as a 4-year player, that talent level. You want him to be a 3-year player, be a mid-first rounder, go live out his dreams, have a great career at Texas. He needs to have a big sophomore season.
And while we're talking about receivers, Christopher asked, how much of an increase do you think we'll see when it comes to Texas throwing the ball downfield?
Oh, man.
Significant.
Yeah.
Significant. Percent though. Look,
It's hard to say.
What did Quinn's average yards per attempt go down to? 7.8, or am I right about that? From early in his career, is closing in on 10.
Yeah.
Arch was over 9.5, I think. I just think he's a different type of player. He's more willing to take chances downfield and has the arm to do it, and the height, and sees the back shoulder maybe a little bit better than Quinn.
Yeah.
So we'll see what ends up happening there, but I can't give you a percentage, but
until you know how teams are going to play Texas and have success too. That's a big part of it. You can't just force. If you start throwing late deep late middle, you have issues. So you can't just force the football. I'm interested to see how teams play Texas next year, knowing that Sark wants to throw it deep and he has a quarterback that now can throw it vertically. How are teams going to play Texas? That's going to be one of the interesting things to kind of follow. And you'll see some of it against Ohio State with many months to prepare for that game, prepare for Sark, and prepare for Sark and Arch together. then you won't see it as much. It won't show up as much with the following 3 games, just from an athletic standpoint. But then you get into at Florida. How are teams going to play Texas next year defensively, schematically, versus Arch and Sark, who both want to throw it vertically down the field? I'm very interested to see.
All right, before we get to our last few questions of the day, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell everyone about John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management one last time.
Yeah, absolutely. John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management Group. John's a proud UT alum, and he's served 15 years as a Dallas Texas X board member and is now helping lead the build-out of the Collin County Texas X chapter. Just yesterday, John helped host the Collin County chapter Texas Independence Day happy hour and poker tournament celebration. Guys, join up one of these clubs if you're interested in that sort of stuff. Like yesterday's Spring Forward on our clocks, John would also like to help OTFs spring forward with their personal financial goals. John's offering you a free 90-minute private consultation to share with you how a certified financial planner can help you identify and implement strategies and solutions to ensure you achieve your wealth management goals and objectives. Give John a call, 972-707-4900, or go online, www.longhornwealth.net, to secure your free 90-minute private consultation today. Hook them from John and the Longhorn Wealth Management Group.
I'm going to answer this real quick. Daddy Trill asks, Texas recruiting 5, the lefty combo shooting guard from Duncanville. He signed with TCU. Basketball recruiting really fickle, 6'2" and change kid. A lot of the high majors didn't really go on him. Texas offered him early. Some people offered him early, but a lot of those schools didn't really go on him. He signed with TCU in the early period. Really good player. That kid plays hard. I've watched him practice when he was a younger kid, when I was up at Duncanville covering Ron Holland and those guys. That Caden Edwards kid he has a tremendous mindset. Tremendous mindset. It'll take him places.
Sark at 11 o'clock today, guys. That's the big piece of news. CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe will both be there. We'll have immediate reactions with any major breaking news that Sark has here at On Texas Football, the video channel, as well as on podcast and on TexasFootball.com. We'll follow and live blog the podcast or the press conference on TexasFootball.com as well.
I want to answer this one real quick before we get out of here. Thanks, Jeff Gary, for Super Chat. How much money for an elite basketball transfer? I'm not going to say the where, which y'all know one, JT Toppin. But 1.215 for a season is out there. And Texas Tech, absolutely smart move by them. They've got their money's worth. And McCaslin's a great young coach, by the way. Watch him up close. But JT Toppin has been worth every penny to Texas Tech. They're about to be a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament, and he's a really good player. And there's some chatter they're going to try to get him back for another year, even though he's a late first-round pick mock. Then there's somebody in the Big 12 that was 1.5 that's been on one of probably the most disappointing team in the Big 12 this year. So it's that number is getting up there. But like Nick Saban said, you better pick the right players, else you're out of luck.
And we
I completely agree with that.
Another super chat from It's 420 somewhere. Blake, what's your biggest concern with the baseball team heading into SEC play? Kind of what I was talking about earlier, that pitching lull in the middle of the game. So the relievers, I think Texas, the staff is still tinkering with some pieces, trying to figure that out. So that would be my main concern more than anything. Thank you for the question. And we will close with this one here. Kenny Joe says, I'm most interested in the status of the running back room and what are the odds of Baxter or Christian making it back this season?
Christian's looking positive as far as being ready for August because he's doing there's pictures coming out. He's doing the front squats. Obviously, Cedric Baxter is a significant knee injury. Even if he's back full speed, movement-wise by August, it doesn't mean he's ready to play a football game at the end of August, Bobby. That one is kind of more of a to be determined on him. when you're ready to come back and start making those cuts in full pads, taking that hit and continuing on and carrying a load, touching it 12, 14 times in a game, taking those hits. There's Christian Clark about a week and a half ago on the front squat there. Bobby, I think Cedric Baxter's on a longer runway.
Yeah, we're a little concerned about Cedric making it back for the first of the season, whereas I think that Christian Clark's going to be participating in fall practice for sure. So let's see where this ends up. Baxter's injury was significant. We had Brett Robin on here talking about it, the orthopedic, that former Longhorn running back himself, and PCL, MCL, LCL, ACL. That's a complete tendon or ligament reconstruction. So it's gonna. I hope he's doing. It looks like he's doing well, and people are saying he's doing well. But I'm pretty psyched about the idea that he'll get back. But man, there's a little question there about whether or not he can get back to everything that he once was.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football, presented by John Donovan and Longhorn Wealth Management Group. I want to thank John, along with the good folks at Gooder, Joy Mode, and Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's show. Of course, thank you all for the great questions, the super chats. Bobby, obviously, you got Sark later today, some reactions to that. But then what's later today?
We got the winning drive, Rod B, Coach Shipley, on at around 3:15. CJ will be there as well. Jerry and I are talking ball tonight at 7, taking recruiting questions or anything you want to talk about as it relates to the Longhorns. We'll start that around 7:15. Please drop by. Happy to do that. But long story short, with Sark going to the mic, basketball team, I mean, look, I don't know.
It's going to be a busy week.
Yeah, we just don't know what the timetable is for Chris Del Conte. I would imagine they play Wednesday night. We'll see. We'll see what it all means. That's all I can say right now.
Well, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would definitely appreciate that. And then, as I said earlier, head on over to ontexasfootball.com. If you're not a member, become one using promo code OTFOG. Lock in that annual subscription for just $49.95. And between those two avenues, we got you covered around the clock. And we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. So for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake.